very long history of success. He's made top 22 and got that Day 2 Worlds invite in the past. He is a very well-known player, and for very good reason, quite frankly. He's earned that reputation.
Also a former Dutch national champion, I believe.
Absolutely. Now, it looks like Benji is going to be playing Turtonator Volcanion, and he is going to be against Romain Carriere?
Romain Carriere. I would probably, if we want to, try and do my best French accent, although probably fail miserably. And it looks like he is going to be playing Necrozma, like Garbodor Necrozma.
It's a bit of a Garbodor tool deck. He's got Mew, he's got Necrozma, he's got Oricorio, one of those promo Giratina cards, which is so good against Trevenant and Greninja, neither of which are really, I think there's one of each of those in the entire field today. So he's got a bit of a mishmash deck, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, Garbodor Toolbox is going to be very interesting to see in action, as we do see that the prize cards being there put out. A lot of supporters prized. These are like teammates, two Junipers, but also a Versus Seeker.
And Dimension Valley, and in an all-psychic deck, Dimension Valley is going to be huge, bringing down the attack cost of all of those Pokemon. Now, in terms of Benji's deck, it's Volcanion Turtonator. It's very much like we've come to expect. It's a different list to what we just saw Nico Alabas playing. Again, we've got, one Tapu Lele, and Nico was talking in the interview about how good he feels free is. Although we've got two non-GX Volcanion and an EX Volcanion prized. And he's only actually playing two of those Power Heater Volcanions, so they're off the board.
Yeah, at least until he gets to a point in the game where he can fish them out of the prizes. But yeah, it could be a bit of an unfortunate turn for Benji. Going back to Roman for a second, now, this deck is... I wasn't even know what to say about it. So you've got these different psychic attackers. The idea is to rely upon Dimension Valley to reduce their attack costs, I imagine, and just try and maybe get like an early hit in with Necrozma GX. Of course, Necrozma has that insanely powerful Black Ray GX, which can do 100 damage to each of your opponent's EX and GX Pokemon for only 3 colorless energy. So with a Dimension Valley and a double colorless, you can actually do that GX attack for one single energy attachment.
Which is just amazing. And, really does put a whole bunch of pressure on your opponent. I mean, this seems just like a classic counter deck. You've got essentially everything you need, and the Giratina there. Okay, so let's play a Giratina. That will really help out against, Greninja or against Trevenant. And then we've got Necrozma. We've got a very GX-heavy format at the moment, so this is going to be good for doing a whole bunch of damage to them. And let's face it, GX attacks are so good, you want to be using one of them at some point during the game. Then you've got Oricorio. Well, that's going to be quite good against Night March, and it's just, there's so many options. Although, after all of that, he starts with a Tapu Lele.
He does, and Benjamin, on right, who will be going first, is going to be starting off with a Volcanion EX, as we does start off there with the Ultra Ball, getting 2 Fire Energies and Discard Power straight away. Not bad at all. He's now be able to look through, and imagine you're just going to try and decide. Now, a Tapu Lele, it doesn't really tell you much. Like, if your opponent starts with that, you just think, okay, my opponent is playing a consistent deck. That's basically what most of the time what that sort of says. So right now he's probably gonna. It looks like he's eyeing up a Shaman. Actually, gonna bring that to the bottom of his deck, and he looks like he might be just trying to dig for more cards at this point in the game.
It's quite possibly the way. I mean, he does have his single Tapu Lele. There is potentially a Kiawe play here. But then, of course, what happens if he doesn't have anything on the... Does he really want to put 4 energy on a Volcanion?
Probably not.
Especially when it's in the active, and then Tapu Lele could hit it for, goodness, 150 damage with a Choice Band.
Yeah. No, that would definitely not be ideal. So instead, there goes a Steam Up, getting 1 more Fire Energy out of the hand, and yeah, Shaman set up for 3. Looks like Benjamin's quite nervous, like drawing that hand. The hand's shaking a little bit there. Maybe realizing that his draws aren't optimal. He does have Scorched Earth though, and he has another Fire Energy, so he can continue to dig. And he's already sending up a lot of Fire Energies in his discard pile. Now
he does have a pair of Turtonators. I think he drew 2 of them off of his Scorched Earth, and now here comes the Blacksmith, getting 2 energy onto Turtonator, and he hasn't actually attached for his turn yet. So here comes down a Shaman, and now this is starting to look a lot more reasonable. Oh, sorry, he was just putting the Shaman onto the bench. He'd already played it previously. So he passes with 2 energy on a Turtonator. It's always disappointing when you play Blacksmith to accelerate 2 energy, but you miss your energy attachment for the turn. He could have attached rather than using Steam Up, but then again, all he had was a Volcanion at that moment.
Yeah, not really ideal, as going back over to Roman, he's got the Ultra Ball there, and looks like he's going to be grabbing himself his other Tapu Lele. Clearly not got much going on else in his hand, and we'll be searching for... Oh no, just go search for the Bridget.
I don't think this is a bad play at all. Means he can show us which Pokemon he thinks is going to be good, are going to be good in this particular matchup. And, I'd be surprised if there were fewer than 2 Trubbish here. One thing that always really annoys me is when you start Tapu Lele and then you don't have a good supporter in your hand. So you then have to play another Tapu Lele. It's just kind of annoying.
It is, but, when you got to do it, you got to do it. And having to... As we've discussed before, Ross, the thing is about Tapu Lele is that it's one of these consistency cards that does not have anywhere near as many drawbacks as some of the other ones. You see, even Shaman, very strong, but it's only got 110 HP. It's weak to lightning. It's very, very vulnerable. Tapu Lele not only has got more HP, but has no weakness and a very strong attack. So there's almost no drawback to having like 1 or 2 on the bench, apart from like maybe not being able to play down another attacker.
And unfortunately, there is a reason here why so many people play so many Leles. Now, he is just using Energy Drive for 40. Interestingly enough, Roman is only playing 2 Tapu Lele. So that's it now, turn 1, and he's out of Tapu Lele for the game.
Yeah, which is an unfortunate turn for him, but it looks like, Benjamin going to go for the Guzma. Does he have the other Fire Energy in hand? He must do, because he's got to. If he has one in hand and then another one to attach, then that will be the KO. Or no, he's going for the Shell Trap.
Oh, I don't mind this play at all. He didn't have much, did Benjamin, but he plays Shell Trap, does 20 damage, not particularly good, but it means that if your opponent damages Turtonator the following turn, they take 8 damage counters, at which point you're basically talking 100 damage for 2 energy. That ain't too shabby.
Not shabby at all, as we do see... Again, the Colress coming down there for Roman, one of the, mentioned before, staples of the expanded format. One of the real power draw cards this format has, allowing you to shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a card for each bench Pokemon you and your opponent have. So he's going to be able to get 7 cards off of this.
And I just looked at that, and I feel a bit silly for thinking this, but I went, he's only getting 7. I'm like, hang on a second. Professor Oak's new theory used to be an amazing card where you shuffle in and grab 6. N gets you 6 in the early game, and we think that's really good. 7's brilliant. It's just in the context of a card that can get you anywhere from 10 to 16, depending on whether there's a Skyfield in play or not. 7 is weirdly a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's only weird to think about that, but that definitely is the case, as... Now, it looks like Roman found himself a 3rd Trubbish, and he's got 2 of the Trash Launch Garbodors out, so he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on Benjamin to make sure, hey, don't play too many items, otherwise I'm going to come in and ruin your day. But something that we do have to remember, of course, is that, personally I feel, and I don't know if you agree with this, Ross, one of the strengths of the Turtonator deck, it is one of these decks that can get by a lot better not playing any items, because you can rely much more on supporters and stadiums. You can just Blacksmith and Scorched Earth your way through an entire game and really limit the amount of damage that the Trash Launch Garbodor can do. I
think it's an excellent point, and I agree entirely, and I was thinking a very similar thing, because if you look at Romain's bench here, he's got 2 Trash Launch Garbodors, but they're not really doing very much at the moment. It's great to have them for the late game, but okay, so he's got 2 of them, they're not doing very much. He's got a Trubbish, not doing very much. He's got a Tapu Koko that can spread damage, but isn't doing very much. And then he's got 2 Tapu Lele. There's no real big attackers on his field at the moment, and that's slightly worrying. Something like an Acrosma to start softening up all of these Turtonators would be pretty sweet in the near future, but of course he doesn't have the bench space to facilitate that. And a minute ago he used an energy to retreat Tapu Lele so that he could put the other Tapu Lele active. He did 8 damage and took 8 damage.
Yeah, really not ideal at all. As we see there, Benjamin, literally all he does for his turn is attach an energy and do a Bright Flame. Turtonator is one of these decks that can do that. It can have these really minimalist turns where you just do one thing, but it's enough to put you in such of a lead that it actually just doesn't even matter. And now Roman really, really wants to make sure that he sees Necrozma soon, because if he's able to do a Black Ray this turn, that would actually be an immense swing back in his favour. Benjamin's bench and active is full of EX and GX Pokemon. A Black Ray here would mean all those take 100, and it means that both the Turtonator and the Shaman would only be 10 HP away from being KO'd.
And then, of course, something like a Flying Flip from Tapu Koko, for argument's sake. And there we see the Field Blower, which is kind of irrelevant. The Giratina, which is not for this matchup. if he's got a double colourless energy here, like you said, he can just pop the Necrozma down, double colourless energy, use Dimension Valley, and go right away. And that could... And here's the thing. A minute ago, I was saying, oh, he's not doing much damage with any of these Pokemon, and that's true. But one Black Ray GX, combined with all these little attacks, can often be all it takes.
Look, Black Ray GX it's probably going to end up being like the great equalizer in this matchup almost, because like you very rightly said, Ross, following up with a Flying Flip means he's taking 2 more prizes, and at that point he's only 2 more away from winning the game. And unlike the thing is about Necrozma is that it's really hard to deal with it in the sense of, because when you're doing 100 to everything, normally if you're only doing to one thing, you think, oh, maybe I can use AZ or Ace Rollers to pick it up and sort of set back, because normally it's quite annoying when something with only 10 HP away from being KO'd gets picked up. But there's just too many things that will be damaged for that to be worthwhile. So, although sure, you can maybe pick up one of the things that's only 10 HP from being away from knocked out from a Tapu Koko Flying Flip, it's still ridiculously strong.
Yeah, it's just, and that really must be where Romain's going here. I mean, if we look at Benjamin's deck list, he is playing a single Ace Roller, which of course allows you to pick up a damaged Pokemon with no downside, other than that you're using your supporter for the turn. But it's only one. Thing is, Romain has got to start going here quickly, because he doesn't have space on his bench, so he's doing fine. And this presumably is going to be for a double colourless to use a Flying Flip. But then that's at least 2 of his double colourless he's used. 1 on the Tapu Lele, 1 on the Tapu Koko. And all Benjamin's going to need here is just a Blacksmith. And then he's got the KO right back with Turtonator.
I think that what Roman's doing here is he's trying to do it in the opposite order. I think he wants to, although it's unfortunate they had to bench the Lele to grab a supporter, so his bench is full again, he's assuming that something else will get KO'd at some point, and that bench slot will then be free again. So just doing the Flying Flip first means that he doesn't need to expend as many resources to do the Black Ray GX straight away, and instead he can do it after this Flying Flip, then at that point he would KO the Turtonator and the Shaman.
And I agree. And I think it's the better way round. Because we don't know how much Benjamin knows about Romain's deck here. It may well be that he doesn't even know there's a Necrozma coming. If you use the Necrozma, then Benjamin's going to go, I need to pick up one of these with Ace Roller. But at the moment, I mean, none of them are that close to being KO'd. So he's like, nah, I'm cool. And then Romain's just going to go, boom, Necrozma, I win the game.
Basically, yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. In fact, if Roman is able to get away with 1 more Flying Flip, he can do an extra 20 to the Volcanion EX on the bench, and at that point, Black Ray actually does just outright win the game. Not even metaphorically, but literally.
Oh, now we do see the Blacksmith here. This had to be what Benjamin had to do. And this is one thing that makes this Tapu Koko, the non-GX, so gosh darned good, is the fact that it's a 1-prize Pokemon attacking for a single energy attachment, but it's like, alright, don't knock me out, but I'm just going to do 20 damage. If you've got a full bench, it's doing a total of 120 damage for a double colourless energy. So it's just kind of like, okay, don't knock me out, but you realise how much damage I'm doing, right?
Yep, pretty much exactly that. Also, Ross, I just noticed something from earlier. We mentioned earlier that Roman only plays 2 Tapu Lele GX. He actually plays 3. That's Tapu Lele GX here.
Oh, I do. But he's written the name on... Yes. We're looking at his deck list here. He's actually written it 2 different ways. I believe we've got an English name and a French name. And I'm going to be honest with this. My Pokemon French is not yet fluent. So I do.
Neither is mine. But in case you were wondering, a Tapu Lele GX in French is Tokopion GX. So there you go.
Now we know.
Yes.
That is one of the great things about tournaments like this. We've got a proper European crowd. We've got a French guy playing a Dutch guy here. Earlier we had a Portuguese chap playing against a
German chap.
We had 2 British chaps playing round 1. I mean, it's brilliant. But it does mean that sometimes we get deck lists in languages that we don't read. And things like this happen.
Indeed. So, anyway, whilst we're talking about all of that, Roman has... Benjamin was able to take another KO on the Tapu Koko with the Bright Flame there, and now Roman is gonna try and mount some sort of counter-response. Again, he still is a bit reluctant to reveal this Necrozma GX. I think he wants to wait until he has access to another Flying Flip before he can do that, although, having said that, I'm not entirely sure if he's able to Flying Flip at this point. I'm not sure if he's out of rescue stretches, but no, instead, he's going to bring up the Trubbish, and he is going to do an attack which we've not seen in a while now, Tool Drop.
That is amazing. And I was going to say, he needs one more tool. He's got it. 8 tools is 80, plus the muscle band is 100, and he's actually using Tool Drop. Now, I believe it was myself and Joe on an earlier round, a couple of rounds ago. I believe it was with Philip Schultz. We were saying that a lot of expanded decks want to use a Tool Drop Trubbish because situations like this happen. And let's face it, in a Garbodor deck, you're playing 4 Floatstone anyway. You're playing 3 or 4 Muscle Band or Choice Band anyway, so sometimes you can actually find yourself doing a cheeky 120 damage using the Tool Drop Trubbish, and it's so much fun. And it's something that your opponent doesn't see coming, and now you've got that beautiful situation where you take 2 prizes using a Pokemon that, if KO'd in return, only gives up a single prize.
I don't know about you, Ross, but personally, seeing that attack being used, I'm feeling very nostalgic right now, because the Tool Drop focus deck is one I played myself for quite a while, and sort of seeing it back in action now just can't help but bring a smile to my face.
Honestly, I never got into Tool Drop. I did before this tournament. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to play just Tool Drop Trubbish and Garbodor and just focus on those 2 strategies. It seems so good in theory, but I spent an evening testing it, and shall we say the results were uninspiring.
Were you saying that you weren't entirely convinced?
I was not entirely convinced, but then again, Remen's got a very similar thing going on here, except he's got Tool Drop Trubbish as an occasional while playing stuff like Necrozma. Now, one thing that Benji's doing brilliantly here, he's getting energy back on the field, because not only did Roman take 2 prizes using that Trubbish, he actually depleted Benjamin's field of all the energy.
Yeah, he did, and now Benji, this attacker is really the only thing that he has left, and he isn't even able to get the KO with Shell Trap, so he's actually forced to Bright Flame, discarding 2 more energy again. And now, I'm not sure if it's possible, given we don't exactly know how many items are in Benji's discard, but if they're enough for Roman to take a KO with Trash Avalanche, then again, Benji's going to be forced to dig for another Blacksmith.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that would be very, very hurtful. I mean, at this stage, I'm thinking whether he might want to kind of try using a Choice Band on a Necrozma and bringing the Volcanion into the active. But it's just, it's an awful lot to ask for at the moment. And here's the thing, you end up in this situation where Roman constantly seems to be looking for 3 or 4 cards at a time, while Benjamin just sits there going, Blacksmith.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, it's like we were saying earlier, Turtonator can play in this very minimalist fashion where, although you think, oh, you need to dig for that 1 card, once you find it, that's it, you just don't need to do anything else, so it allows you to preserve resources a lot more easily.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's such a good deck, and it's one of those, it almost snuck up on me. I'm sitting there, you know, about when Guardians Rising comes out, and I'm looking at the expanded format, as I'm always want to do, and it's just the more you think about Turtonator with stuff like Blacksmith, you're like, this is really good. Then Burning Shadows drops, and you've got Ho-Oh and Kiawe, and it just turns into like, hang on a second, how many tricks does this deck actually have? The answer is a lot, although there is still a win condition here. Double colourless energy. Now, has he just played his supporter for the turn?
He's just played a Chorus.
Double colourless energy, Choice Band, Guzma would win the game there, because he would then be able to Black Ray, doing 130 to the Volcanion, 100 to the Shaman, winning straight away. Again, it's quite an awkward combination, but there was the possibility that would have won the game.
Yeah. I think the one saving grace for Roman here is that he knows that Benji will need essentially to play 2 supporters in 1 turn, which of course is not allowed, in order to take the win. He would need both a Guzma and a Blacksmith, and you can't do that. So he's safe in that regard at least, and now he's going to be able to do a decent amount of damage with this Trash Avalanche, although
still not enough.
No, still not enough. I was thinking, maybe next turn he could do double colourless and Black Ray, but he's still going to be 10 short of KOing both the Shaman and the Turtonator.
So again, we're back to that whole Choice Band or Muscle Band argument. Either would do in this situation, and to be fair, would have done on the Volcanion as well. And you can, I mean, now, after what we've been playing about 15 minutes, we can see exactly where this deck is going. I don't need to do huge damage with Tapu Lele. I don't need to do huge damage with Garbodor. Sometimes I'll be able to, and that's fun. But what I can do here is just really take advantage of the Necrozma. I would worry with this deck against a really aggressively non-GX focused deck. But having said that, if you're against stuff like Night March, they've got very low HP. So Tool Drop Trubbish and Trashalanch Garbodor would be fine.
Yeah, this deck is clearly it's one of these archetypes that's designed to, because there's almost like two different ways you can like approach a match of Pokemon when you're trying to build a deck. You can maybe try and play a deck which is more linearly focused, try and give us one strategy and do that every single time, or you can play one of these more sort of toolboxy decks that tries to have an answer for every single situation. And we can see very much like towards which preference Roman leads. But just quickly going back to Benjamin here, he did a Nitro Tank GX for his turn, so although he didn't have any energy down before, of course, a Nitro Tank he was able to attach 5, and now he's got 2 Turtonators charged up and ready to go. Yeah,
I was just thinking that. You were literally just saying, oh, Benji doesn't have much energy on the field, and Benji was like, well, I've got a surprise for you. Nitro Tank GX coming out, getting 5 energy back, and now Roman is really, really on a clock. He needs to basically win this turn, because next turn, if Benjamin has got a Guzma, he wins the game, and it really is now. There's a lot that can be done. Now, the great news is Romain doesn't need a Guzma anymore. All he needs, and is he using a Colress here for 9?
He is, but that's a problem because he's already out of float stones, and even if he wasn't, I don't think he's able to, unless he had a field blower as well, he wouldn't be able to discard off the active to attach to Garbodor to retreat, because otherwise, if he had, say, Choice Band plus float stone plus double colorless, he could get the win that way, but that's actually not an option that's available to him, so he's going to have to be content with waiting one more turn, and if Benji's able to find his last 2 prizes here, then Roman will have let this one just about slip away from him.
And you can really see, and I feel like Roman's deck might be quite frustrating for someone like myself, who's less of a patient player to play, because it's 4, 5 turns in a row here we've been going, right, now if he can just do this and get Black Ray, and then every turn there's just 1 card missing, and I feel like he's had kind of a 3-turn window where he basically, there we go, there is the game, it's going to be a Versus Seeker or a Guzma, either will do. Benjamin Pham will take game 1 against Roman.
Yes, so very unfortunate for Roman. We could see the win condition building up there, it was just always just within reach, but sadly not able to get that last little push over the cliff to take the win, and Benji was able to capitalize on it to take this game.
And it's so awkward, because like I said, it's like a 3-turn window where it was like, right, I just need these couple of cards, I missed one. Yeah. Well, now I need these cards, I missed one. And then it was so close to having the KO with Black Ray GX. And that's what's really frustrating sometimes. When you look at it and you go, soon as I Black Ray GX, I'm getting 4 prizes and winning the game. I can't do it this turn, but it's all right. He can't win next turn. As soon as I get Black Ray GX, it's just turn after turn where he can't quite get the combination rolling.
Like every single subsequent time you do it and you miss it, like just that little bit of extra hope just like drains from out of your voice. Just again, almost there, but not quite. It's just like, oh, I guess that one slipped away from me.
Although I'd like to thank Roman for bringing this deck along, to be honest, because we're in the expanded format, and so far what we've seen today is a lot of what we expected to see. We've seen Volcanion Turtonator, we've seen a whole bunch of Garbodor because it's ridiculously good, we've seen Darkrai, we've seen Night March, and now we've got a deck that, I'm going to be honest, I was not expecting to see. Now, I know it's still a Garbodor list, but it's not Garbodor with Golisopod, it's not Garbodor with Ho-Oh, with nobody plays that, with Trampa or with Espeon. It's Ho-Oh with Necrozma, but really just for that once per game Black Ray, and that's what I really like here.
So going to Roman's prizes, as we see here, he does prizes one of a Garbotoxin Garbodor. Obviously he's played the old one from Plasma Freeze rather than the newer one. Any particular decision-making process behind that, do you think? Or do you think that's just personal preference?
It's beautiful. Why would you not play it? It's beautiful. I mean, we're in this really weird situation. We got 2 Garbodor, both of which are different but do the same thing. Anyway, more on that later. Roman has started off. He's got an energy and a floatstone on his Trubbish, which is great. And he's also got himself a Tapu Koko, and I don't think there is a better starter at the moment. Because here's the thing, even if there's a Pokemon you'd rather have in the active than Tapu Koko, brilliant, he's got free retreat.
Yeah, Tapu Koko, hands down, in my opinion, one of the best starters in the entire game, both for, like I said, his free retreat and also just the incredible attack. It used to be that if you wanted to do just a little bit more than that. You'd have to attach 2 water energies and a colourless energy to a Noble Victories Curum, but now you get to do it 20 to everything for just a single double colourless attachment on a basic.
And Carriere only did 30, so yeah, it's quite a little bit better. I mean, honestly, if I made a list of the best Pokemon in the game at the moment, I think Tapu Koko would be there just for the pure adaptability, the amount of different things it does. And when you add in free retreater, decent HP, and colourless attack, meaning it can be put in any deck whatsoever, or having said that, it looks like at the moment all he's actually got is, okay, that's not a great turn overall. Love the start Tapu Koko, love the energy float stone, but just 2 Trubbish? It's not ideal.
No, it's not, but at the same time, I guess the one worry could have maybe been if Benjamin was able to do a really aggressive, Blacksmith plus attach turn to get the KO on the Tapu Koko, but looks like Benjamin has had to play a Sycamore, so that won't be happening at the very least, and it looks like Benji's going to have to be content with a lot more of a slower turn 1.
It's not always the end of the world. I mean, we saw before, Benjamin's deck is going to be taking KOs. Roman is not relying on huge HP Pokemon to sit and tank and do a whole bunch of damage like Benji is with Turtonator and Volcanium. He's chipping away until he can use Black Ray. It's as simple as that.
It really is. So now, we do see that Benjamin did bench a Sudowoodo, so it's actually more of a problem for a deck like Roman's than it might be for some other decks, because having that 1 extra bench slot is really important. You want to be able to access all of your different tech attacker matchups that you want for a certain matchup, so that 1 extra bench slot, although it doesn't seem that much, actually makes a pretty big difference.
But how many times in the previous game did we say, alright, well he can bench an Necrozma now, but he's going to have a bench slot opened up? The one thing is, he didn't start with Tapu Lele, and he wasn't forced to use a Tapu Lele on turn 1, so you could argue that even with Sudowoodo, he's actually 1 bench space up on the previous game, as weird as that is.
Yeah, that's very true. I've not thought about it that way, but that's actually an excellent point. So from this Ultra Ball now, it looks like, I didn't quite see Roman grab there, but I imagine he might be considering going for the... Oh, he's going for Lele, okay.
And I don't hate this play at all. This play is a very nice one. He's got the Tapu Lele. He can go for whatever he wants. He can go and grab himself an N or, even something like a Guzma potentially. To stall, I wouldn't have liked that play very much, but he goes for a Professor Juniper, and that's absolutely fine. It depends what you've got in your deck, but he saw that Benjamin didn't do very much. So he knows that Benjamin has got a fairly lackluster hand, to put it politely. So it's a situation where you only N if you absolutely have to.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And now he was able also to attach a Muscle Band to his Tapu Koko inactive. That's pretty cool. That means that he'll be able to... Oh no, I was thinking he could, it means that 2 Flying Flips in the active and it would put it within Black Ray range, but no, it would be 10 short again. 190 against 180 makes so much more of a difference than you actually think about when you think about it for the first time, because it's only 10 extra, but what that puts out of reach for you in terms of that difference is actually surprisingly large.
Oh, it's huge. We were talking about it in the previous game with Golisopod GX's GX attack that does 150 with a Choice Band does 180. That's not enough to KO Turtonator. So no, it's absolutely huge. The other one I find in the game, 120 compared to 130 is a big deal.
Yeah, a lot of things that hit for 60 damage, so say, you could 60 damage 2-shot something, or even like 120, but that extra 10, it means that, we saw it a lot back when Reshiram and Zekrom were big, because their attacks, they had 130 HP each, but they each only did 120 damage, so you need that extra little bit, make it like a plus power to get the KO every single time.
Absolutely. Now, we did see Benjamin there. He's got the Volcanion on the bench. He used a single Steam Up combined with the Choice Band, Muscle Band, meaning that Shell Trap did 70 damage, was exactly enough to KO the Trubbish, and, of course, it was with Shell Trap. So if Romain attacks the Turtonator now, he's taken those 8 damage counters. And absurd as this is, Benjamin's had a terrible start. And yet... he's surprised up and doing pretty well for himself.
Like, again and again and again, we see the Turtonator deck can do barely anything, but but still just put on enough pressure to really put on a really good show and a really good game. As we saw that Roman was forced to Juniper again, discarding even more resources from his hand. He's trying to dig for some kind of response, which seems ridiculous to say considering Benjamin hasn't put up what is an obvious first glance, not much of a threat, but it actually is a big threat because, as you said, Ross, he's done Shell Trap. It was enough for the KO with the Volcanion, and now if he tries to hit this Turtonator back, he's going to get punished for it by taking damage counters himself.
Meaning that a Shell Trap with 0 steam ups will then get the KO. Or he can just use 1 steam up and KO one of those Trubbish. Or he can add an extra energy and do 180, which goes back to our 180, 190 compensation, which will KO a Tapu Lele. There's so much. And I mean, Turtonator is just, in standard, without Blacksmith, it's a little bit lost how good Turtonator is. But in expanded, it's just crazy good.
It is. The one saving grace for Roman here is that because he was able to do 60 before with the Tool Drop Trubbish, and now he's doing 40 with the Flying Flip, that Turtonator is now taking 100 damage. So now, and again, it probably won't come up for a little bit now because there's still quite some more of setup to progress, but at least the Turtonator will be in Black-Ray range.
He will, but Benjamin's a very good player. Benjamin has seen the Necrozma. It went down on the bench. Benjamin is not going to want a Pokemon EX or GX on his bench with 100 HP remaining or less, because he is going to be thinking, no, I don't want you to get a cheeky KO with Black Ray GX. I am not falling for that. You knock it out when it's in the active.
You're going to knock it out in the active and you're going to like it.
Exactly. Exactly that. And the thing is, I mean, it looks like he's going to go 2 prizes up just using that Turtonator. And that's if it gets KO'd next turn. And there isn't really much that Roman has. I mean, Benjamin, has he got 1 item in the discard maybe? He certainly doesn't have many items in the discard at all.
No, Trash Avalanche is not going to be able to put on any kind of pressure at all, really. If anything, the Tool Drop Trubbish is arguably more of an attacking threat right now than any Trash Avalanches that Roman would maybe thinking about.
But it's still only doing 60. It would need another 2 tools to get a KO. Except, I say, well, I'm assuming the Tapu Koko gets KO'd, because we know it's just about to a Shell Trap. And, of course, even if he used Tool Drop, he would then get KO'd by those 8 damage counters from Shell Trap. It's just annoying.
I think that is the best way to put it. So, I mean, the same goes for Roman is if he does find the Psychic Energy and another tool, because Benjamin has his own tool on his side of the field, that would then be, I believe that would then be enough, because as long as, with the Muscle Band, it would be 80 plus 20, 100, so then that would take the knockout there, but Roman needs to find another tool to do that, and then, as you rightly said, they would then just get KO'd in return, and then Roman's going to be very sad.
I mean, that would put Benjamin down to 2 prizes and Roman down to 4, so... Oh no, now we've got the... Okay, so now he does have the KO with Tool Drop, since the Floatstone came down on Volcanion, although he would... No, actually, would he need the energy? So he's got 1, 2, 3... So there's 5 tools on... No, so he would actually be able to get the KO with the Floatstone Trubbish here. But again, it's still getting KO'd by the Shell Trap damage counters, so it's almost kind of irrelevant.
It's, just very, very unfortunate. As you see there, Benji's actually able to set up the rest of his field very nicely as well. He's got the non-EX Volcanion down with an energy on it. I imagine we might see it do a Steam Artillery at some later point in the game, maybe to try and sort of even out that prize trade KO some of Roman's stuff with non-EX attackers. But even at this point, he doesn't need to that much because he's already taken such a prize lead. He can almost afford to, put up a Turtonator or a Volcanion, use it to KO something and then let it get KO'd for 2 prizes because he'll still be ahead.
He is in such a commanding position here. And of course he is already up 1-0, so this would end the match. And it's got to be disappointing because in Game 1, Romain was in the game the whole time. He was doing really well and he was setting himself up and he never quite got the Black Ray GX. But had he done so, I mean, there were several turns where it looked like he was a favourite to win the game. Game 2, even though Benjamin's had a really bad draw, it's just... And this is all from 1 Turtonator, might I add. There was a bit of steam-up action from the Volcanion EX on the bench. But this is 1 Turtonator that's been doing all of this.
this plays into a theme that we've actually talked about a couple of times on past streams, Ross, which is the best cards in Pokemon tend to be the ones that do the most with a minimal amount of investment. All this Turtonator has done is done 20 or 40 damage, maybe a little bit more some of the steam ups, but just 2 energy, and it's just been doing that these little bits, but that's still just been enough to carry Benjamin through all the way up until now, because although it doesn't seem like much, it still puts on enough pressure to see him through the game and make him take a commanding lead.
I mean, I suppose I agree with you entirely, and I think Shell Trap is one of those attacks where your opponent has to play around it. And if they don't, if they can't play something like an Escape Rope or a Guzma or a Lysander or some way to attack a bench Pokemon instead, then they're just walking into the trap. I had to. Yeah. And almost kind of doing a lot of your work for you.
No, the only reason I'm disappointed in you saying that is because I didn't think of it myself first.
I know you are the man with whom I cast, Nick, that is most appreciative of the puns. I thought I'd save that one for you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, the Garbodor does come in the active here, and it looks like... Oh!
Did he just pass?
Looks like he just passed.
That's... interesting play.
Well, he's working around Shell Trap. He doesn't want to take those 8 damage counters, which I get where he's coming from. But the problem is, Benjamin now has an extra energy attachment. So, downside of Bright Flame, you discard 2 energy. But if your opponent doesn't attack, you basically get an extra turn. So, in reality, you're only really discarding 1 energy, if that makes any sense, using Bright Flame. And then it gets a KO anyway. So, as much as I see what Raman did there, I don't necessarily think I agree with it, because he was kind of hoping that Benji wasn't going to have the energy. And then when he did, he's kind of just giving up a KO.
I mean, the one thing it does do, it forces Benji to use Bright Flame instead of Shell Trap. If he had taken the 8 damage counters, then Shell Trap without any extra attachments would have guaranteed the knockout back. But yeah, absolutely, it doesn't seem like that was worth it enough to not attack, if that makes sense. Unless, and also... I mean, I had to assume it wasn't a KO. There must just not be enough items in the discard pile, because if it was, then surely you'd just go for it.
Well, that is the other really salient point there, because if it wasn't a KO, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't KO, he takes the 8 damage counters, then a Muscle Banded Shell Trap KOs back and you're in the same position. Whereas if you can KO the Turtonator, then maybe they don't have a Turtonator, or maybe they don't have the Muscle Band / Steam Up, or maybe they don't have the Blacksmith needed to get both the energy on, and then you can work without Shell Trap, because there are some matchups with Volcanion Turtonator where all you do is just sit and Shell Trap. This is one of those matchups, it seems, and you'll notice how different this is to the previous game. This is not how Benjamin played Game 1, but after seeing the deck in all its glory, Benjamin seems to be adapting very nicely. Initially forced into it with his terrible draws, but I think now he's actually kind of lent into it essentially and gone, you know what? Yeah. Shell Trap.
Yeah, this works really well. Now, an interesting play from Roman we saw there, he actually opted to bench the Giratina promo and put a Float Stone on it. Now, this Giratina promo is normally put into decks if you're scared of a Trevenant break or Greninja break. Of course, when it's out, all Pokemon break, lose all their abilities, and it also applies to abilities that the break's previous evolution has. So, if you evolve an XY Trevenant into a Trevenant break, the Giratina being out means that the Forest Curse ability wouldn't work, and you'd be able to play items again.
Absolutely. Now, to be honest, I think he's just thinning out his deck a little bit, getting a free retreater on the bench, maybe even adding up for a tool drop in the future. But of course, there is a slight issue in that he's only got 4 bench spaces because of the Sudowoodo, so that might take up a very precious bench space. Although I do love, it appeared that he actually used Mew there to use Memories of Dawn to copy what I imagine was Tool Drop with the Dimension Valley out and get the KO.
Yeah, that was enough to get the KO, and that's actually, thinking about it, that's exactly why he was forced to bench the Giratina. He just needed something else to put the tool on, so he was able to take the KO like that. But even again, like, the response from Benji is just going to be really strong. He's got another Blacksmith. He's just going to be able to... I mean, all he needs is 1 Fire Energy in his hand to do a Shell Trap KO, and even if he does a Bright Flame KO, that's actually just fine, because he has something else to follow up with. He could even take the KO with Steam Artillery on his non-EX Volcanion, and that's indeed the option he's going to go for.
I like this play a lot, because now he's down to 2 prizes remaining. He's got the non-GX in the active. Guzma next turn will win him the game, as long as he draws an energy for Steam Up or a Muscle Band. He will need one of those two to do that extra 10 damage, because Tapu Lele's got 170, not 160. But it's just such a great position for him to be in. And now Raman, he's got 4 prizes left to take. And even if he doesn't KO that Volcanion, there's then a free energy Volcanion just chilling there. And even though Volcanion's usually more for Power Heater and accelerating energy, 100 damage, when you then start building in Steam Up to do extra damage, is a very powerful attacker. It's just usually you put the energy on Turtonator or Blacksmith.
In Expanded, this is a lot more viable route to use the non-EX Volcanion with, because you can just actually attach energy to it very easily, even if it's in the active. And yeah, and in these non-EX matchups, it's just really strong, because you can just do Steam Artillery, and as you rightly said, Ross, once you charge it up with the Muscle Bands and the Steam Ups, you can even sometimes get KOs on big EXs and GXs, and at that point you're again doing that really favourable 1-prize attacker KOing a 2-prize attacker, and that's just always going to work out well for you.
It really will. One thing that's not working out well at the moment, Raman appears to have 1 card in his deck.
Oh dear.
Like, literally 1 card. We saw him kind of swirl it around because he couldn't shuffle, because you cannot shuffle a deck of 1 card. So I don't really know what his plan is here, because he's literally going to deck out. He sycamores and concedes. That was his plan. And Shell Trap.
Shell Trap. That's Shell Trapping his way to a 2-0 victory. Benji will now move on to, I believe that puts him at 5-0 undefeated?
4-0-1.
4-0-1.
These were 2 3-0-1 players we had right now.
Okay, still an incredible record. Probably puts Benji in a very good position to, if not top 8, at least top 16. I
think top 16 is on at this stage. I mean, as we talked with Nico, it's a 7-round tournament, so it's 5-1-1. That really is a magic number. That's not to say no 5-2s will make it, but it's to say that if you want to be safe, 5-1-1 really is a record for which you're looking. And at 4-0-1, it basically means Benjamin has got to win one of his final 2 games.
Just going to point out, 5-1-1 wasn't good enough for me once.
I remember that, Nick. I remember that. Hey-ho. You can't win them all.
No, you can't. But, yeah, we are actually going